Hello YouTube, Bane666 here. So I recently completed and published a video called The Second Wave Hate Machine Part 3, Louise Armstrong, the Shield of Female Pedophiles, in which I talked about second wave feminist Louise Armstrong, who is hailed as a hero by many because of her advocating for victims of incest and pedophilia. Now, I do not see her that way, because she only advocated for female victims of male perpetrators. Apparently male victims of male perpetrators were not important, nor were female perpetrators, nor were male or even female victims of female perpetrators. Apparently the only thing that counted was female victims of male perpetrators. Now, this isn't totally a surprise, considering she herself was a victim as a young girl of her father. So I see her advocacy as lifelong revenge against her father, only not taken out just against her father, but against all males. If she really was interested in victims of incest and pedophilia, she would include all children. If she was interested in advocating for girls and adult women who were molested as children, she would include those females who were victims of female predators. But apparently none of those people are important, because you can't shit on men when you're advocating for those children. And that was her one and only goal. So I don't see her as a hero, but I see her as an absolute fucking scumbag, especially considering she's made it a lot harder for those victims to come forward and tell their story. And that's something I'll be exploring in a video coming out soon. But you may be asking, why am I making an addendum to the Second Wave Hate Machine Part 3? Well, the answer is, as I finished and uploaded that video, I had somewhere I needed to be. So as the video was uploading, I was out the door and heading towards the train station. And I thought about the stats I used at the end of the video, and I'll go through them again in a minute. And that's when a thought occurred to me. Now, unfortunately, this thought didn't occur to me while I was finishing off the video, but then again, it's probably best that I go through this in an addendum, because that video was already quite long, and an extra 10 minutes would have made it even longer. So it's probably best that I do it in this video here. But I thought about those stats in a new way, and I thought it would be interesting to explore them. So when I got home, I did some math and found some interesting results. Now, I should point out that my math skills are extremely rusty. My normal everyday life doesn't really require me to use a lot of math, except maybe adding stuff up in the supermarket or something, basic stuff. But apart from that, I don't use math a lot. So it's quite possible that there is an easier way to calculate what I'm going to be calculating, or it's quite possible that I've made a mistake and totally fucked this up. But I'll explain my logic as I go through it, and hopefully I get it right. But if I do get something wrong, feel free to correct me in the comment section. I'll pin a comment if I fuck something up. And if I make a major mistake, I'll probably do an addendum to this addendum, which, will be an addendum inception, but we'll figure that out when we get there. But hopefully I haven't made any huge mistakes. So the quote from Louise Armstrong I was replying to at the end of that video was one that appeared in the LA Times back in '94, and it says here, "No one denies that some mothers do terrible things to their kids, or that fathers can also rape sons. But Armstrong argues forcefully against making incest a gender-neutral issue." Yes, because she hates men, that's why. "Since the overwhelming number of cases involve fathers and daughters." Overwhelming numbers. That's what we'll be focusing on. And that's why I had a look at a set of statistics. So the stats I looked at said that 76% of reported incest was female and 24% was male. Now, the important word here is reported. Now, I would argue 24% is not an insignificant number and does not justify excluding male victims. But the same paper went on to explain that males are far less likely to report molestation. and it showed 3 sets of statistics from 3 different studies, which ranged from 64% female and 26% male to 64% female reporting to 47% male reporting. Now you'll note the female stat for reporting is pretty consistent, but the male stat for reporting is somewhat different by about 20%. So what I'm going to be attempting to do today, provided my math doesn't fuck up, is try to calculate the actual percentages of child molestation by gender by using reported rapes and the stats for unreported rapes. Now, this isn't going to be exact, okay? For a number of reasons. First of all, obviously we don't know the actual numbers for unreported instances of molestation because they're unreported. We can only estimate them, and we have 3 different figures. I'll be looking at the 2 most extreme, but they are estimates based on different studies, so they're unlikely to be exact. And the other thing is, they were different studies than the original figure I gave you for 76%, 24% reporting. So they're obviously from different sample groups and different populations, and we can't say that they're 100% comparable. But by crunching these numbers, it should give us some kind of idea. It's not going to be exact, it's not going to be perfect, but it will give us some kind of estimation of the real figure, provided I don't fuck up the math, that is. Wish me luck. So let's start with the figures with the lowest percentage of male reporting, and then I'll do the highest percentage of male reporting afterwards, because that should give us an interesting range. So what we know is that the 64% figure is comparable to the 76% figure. Now, yes, I know they're different studies. Once again, not going to be perfect, but it should give us some kind of idea. So, in other words, 64% of females who have been molested report being molested, which makes up 76% of the total. Hopefully that makes sense. So the first thing we need to calculate is how many times does 64 go into 100? And that gives us 1.5625. Now, just to keep things simple, because this is just an estimation, I'm just going to use 1.5. So if we times 76 by 1.5, we get 114. Now, obviously that's not percentage, but we'll work out the percentage in a minute. Now, let's do the same calculation for the male figures. So 100 divided by 26 equals 3.8. And 24 times 3.8 equals 91.2. So we'll just round it down to 91 to keep it simple. Now we need to work out the percentages, so if we add 114 and 91 together, we get 205, and if we divide that by 100, we get 2.05. So now if we divide 114 and 91 by 2.05, we should get percentages. And we get 55.6 for females and 44.3% for males. Now, provided my math is correct and provided the stats are correct, that means 44% of children who are molested are in fact male. Now, I don't know about you, but that's not overwhelming numbers of cases involving fathers and daughters. Those are fairly significant numbers. Now, let's use the same type of calculations for the other set of statistics. Okay, so once again, provided that the stats are correct and provided my math is correct, what we find is 69.5% female and 30.4% for male. So using these 2 different groups of stats, we can estimate that 3 to 4 children out of every 10 children molested are in fact male. Now, I would not consider that to be overwhelming numbers of cases involving fathers and daughters. Okay? 3 or 4 out of every 10 are significant numbers. That is not overwhelmingly female victims. Okay, so what you just listened to, I recorded late last week, and I haven't had the opportunity to finish this video until now, and there's a couple of updates I want to tell you about. So the first update was a comment left by Kern where she points out a paper from, she says 94, but I think the paper's actually from 97, so close. But basically it says only 16% of men reported their abuse and 64% of women. So let's have a quick look at that passage from that particular paper.
In general, we found that women and men differ in the extent to which they recall or report having experienced childhood sexual abuse. Approximately 16% of men with documented cases of sexual abuse considered their early childhood experiences sexual abuse, compared with 64% of women with documented cases of sexual abuse. These gender differences may reflect inadequate measurement techniques or an unwillingness on the part of men to disclose this information.
So let's use the same calculations for these new figures that I used earlier in this video. And what we find is 43.3% female and 56.6% male. Now, like I said, this is by no means perfect. We're estimating an unknown figure because obviously these stats are non-reported. But it does tell us a number of things. Firstly, men are vastly less likely to report. Secondly, if we take that into account, the numbers are a lot closer together than people like Louise Armstrong would like us to believe. And thirdly, it's because of people like Louise Armstrong that men are less likely to report. Now, I'm not going to say that that's the only reason. There are a number of reasons why men are less likely to report, but not being believed is one of the top reasons. And when you gender a sex crime like pedophilia, you're making it harder for men to be believed, especially if their victimizer is female. So, yeah, people like Louise Armstrong should not be hailed as heroes. She did not advocate for victims. She was not concerned about the well-being of victims of molestation. Her one concern was revenge against men because of what her father did. Yes, there is a second update. Those of you who watched the Second Wave Hate Machine Part 3 would be familiar with Vanessa George.
Vanessa George had been working with children for a decade. She had passed all the required checks. She was married with 2 teenage daughters. But secretly, she was a paedophile, sexually abusing babies and toddlers, taking photographs of that abuse on her mobile phone and sending the images to others. Some of the pictures categorized by police as being the worst level of child pornography.
Sexually molesting babies. Now, look, obviously any sex crime is wrong, but molesting babies would have to be the worst possible sex crime you could commit, or, probably any type of crime with maybe the exception of murder, because babies are completely incapable of defending themselves in any type of way. I mean, toddlers are bad enough. That's bad enough. But babies, well, I hate to report this, but Vanessa George is now out of prison. She only got 10 years for molesting toddlers and babies. Now, she was actually released September last year, but I only found out about this when the Honey Badgers mentioned it on one of their shows last week. Apparently there's an update about her being released. Now, I don't know what the average sentence is for a pedophile who works in a childcare centre and molests toddlers and babies, but I'm of the opinion it should be a lot longer than 10 years. In fact, if they locked her up and threw away the key, I think that would probably be a good thing. Okay, so just to finish off the video, I want to go through the reasoning behind my math in this video. I don't think I explained the reasoning enough. I showed the working out, but I didn't explain why I worked out the problem that particular way. And just in case there are fellow math retards out there like myself who may have been confused by it, I just want to simplify it and explain my reasoning, which hopefully is correct. So the stats that we saw for percentages of reported rapes were 76 female, 24 male, and the statistics concerning unreported child molestation, it was 64% of women reported and 26% male. Now, just for the sake of simplicity and to explain this as easy as possible, I'm going to focus on the male statistic of 26%, and I'm going to change it to 25% because that fits into 100% a lot easier. In fact, it's 1/4. So what we know looking at this statistic is that 1/4 of males who are molested have reported it, which means 3/4 haven't. Which means if we go back to the 76-24 statistic, we know that the 24% statistic has to be 3 times higher. Now we do the exact same math for the female figure and then we work out the percentages. So hopefully that's a bit of an easier explanation behind my reasoning, which hopefully is correct.
Ein Haufen Zombies uns herum und die Nächte werden länger. Für kurz 2 Tage noch Munition, danach dann nur noch unsere Hände. Woher sie kommen, wohin sie gehen,